Directed by legendary B-movie provocateur Jim Wynorski, we are talking Dinogator, also known as COBRAGATOR. And this, of course, one of the many kind of hybrid monster flicks that the likes of Roger Corman has spewed out over the years. I actually enjoyed one or two of them, but to be honest with you, I find them to be rather samey. So this one is interesting because it was actually made way back in 2014 under the name COBRAGATOR, but was not released until now with the name Dinogator. And this one stars Michael Madsen and Paul Logan. Paul Logan plays a kind of hunter hired by Michael Madsen, and Michael Madsen plays, well, Michael Madsen like he plays in every movie. So the story is about a giant kind of hybrid monster that has been, it's not quite clear about how it's been created. There is a couple of kind of people from a drug kind of place who said that they've dumped a load of growth hormone into the kind of the river and stuff. But there's also talk that Michael Madsen's character has kind of raised this. So who knows? But anyway, there's this creature. And it's out of control, killing people, and we focus on a group of musicians who want to go and film a music video out in the swamp. So they hire a kind of a local guide, and they've got like their cameraman and stuff. So they're out there, and these inevitably are our main characters who are harassed by both the COBRAGATOR or Dinogator, and actually Michael Madsen's character who wants to kind of cover up his tracks. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it. So you kind of know what you're going to get with this one. Let's be honest with you. Is there any positives that we can say? Now, you've got to bear in mind, this is a 2014 movie in its production. So the CGI, for example, isn't going to be 2024 standards necessarily when this was released. But I didn't think it was that bad, I have to say. I've actually seen worse in modern kind of B movies, if I'm completely honest. I'm not saying this CGI is great, but I have to say there are one or two times where I thought, you know what? That CGI isn't too bad. If you are aware of B movies and low budget kind of filmmaking, I thought, you know what? It's quite fun. The creature kind of looks pretty cool. It looks more like a snake than a gator, it has to be said, like a huge giant snake. But there is, you know, I think it looks pretty cool. It's cool design, and the CGI, at least at times, I think is acceptable if you know you're watching a B movie. Michael Madsen actually does more in this movie than maybe he does in a lot of these kind of low budget flicks. A lot of the time you'll find they'll get a kind of a named actor to kind of sit behind a desk or be on a phone and just kind of film scenes in their house because it's really not that much hassle for them. So you have that kind of name to put on the DVD box or what have you. But here he is actually up and about kind of doing stuff, actually getting more involved with the actual characters. So it is nice to see him, you know, so I say actually a little bit more interactive with the rest of the cast, even though he kind of more or less plays the same character in every film these days. Paul Logan is always quite fun as a kind of a B-movie action kind of hero, but here he's kind of playing a kind of a bad guy, really. I will say I think our main characters, the kind of the guy who plays this tour guide, the boat captain, is actually a relatively sort of grounded character, and I have to say he did seem relatively to be taking it seriously. And as such, he feels fairly earnest. There are kind of lots of kind of like bimbo babes in this movie, all in bikinis all the time, kind of screaming and shouting and jumping up and down. Always kind of fun to look at, as you'd probably expect in a Jim Wynorski flick. It's a relatively kind of pacey movie. Obviously, it's not too worried about having deep storylines and things like that. So, you know, we do have a reasonable amount of just bystanders that end up kind of running foul of this kind of creature and end up getting snapped up. Of course, it does fill out a little bit of time with the human bad guys, as these movies tend to do, but there is still a reasonable amount here of, you know, of the actual kind of creature itself. So what doesn't work in this movie It is just like you think. I mean, if you're watching this movie, you pretty much know exactly the movie that you're going to be watching. It is a silly, schlocky, no one's sort of like too worried about making a cohesive movie. Just quickie monster movie. And as such, all the kind of the usual kind of problems you're going to get with that are on here. You know, we have a cave system where this creature is living, but we can kind of see like electric lights in it and things like this, with, you know, perfectly kind of, you know, level kind of floors, things like that. So it's obviously like some sort of tourist thing. The CGI, although I think it's not too bad for a B movie, and I am a B movie connoisseur, so maybe I have been desensitized. I'll be lying if I was to tell you this was kind of like, you know, mainstream standards, because it isn't. I mean, it is a cheap B movie. I still think it's actually fairly good if you compare it to, if you can imagine this was actually made in 2014. But, you know, plenty of people will say, oh, it's obviously CGI. You know, it is. And like I say, the cast here is just kind of piss-arsing around for the most part, with a couple of exceptions. I think Paul Logan and our main sort of guy from the protagonist is taking it relatively serious. Everyone else is just kind of like, you know, it's kind of like we filmed this over a weekend sort of thing, and that includes Michael Madsen. It doesn't really make any sense. It's kind of a little bit kind of just like, yeah, whatever. You know, just get the kind of the plot going, and we'll kind of like just don't worry about it. The ending, I gotta say, or the final confrontation, is a little bit on the sillier side. I mean, they do try and kind of open it up a little bit, but it's, you're thinking, oh, I don't know, this seems very irresponsible. Let me just kind of say that. And of course, as with a lot of these films, we have that human bad guy element, which of course would mean that it burns runtime, where they don't have to fill it with CGI monsters, and as such, it kind of, you know, lessens the kind of the costs for the filmmakers here. So it's a very kind of run-of-the-mill kind of creature feature. It still has some enjoyable elements if you don't mind some schlock. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.